This is Henri-Bourassa Boulevard, Montreal's attempt to remake a hostile 8-lane arterial into a multimodal corridor with bus lanes and protected bike lanes. I was worried that the new, less supportive mayor would halt this project, maybe even dismantle what had already been built, after some reporting in the media that the project could be reviewed.
And a lot of opposition on social media. We demand the complete removal of this bike lane. We want a corridor for everyone, not just a few. Wait, what? How does that even make sense in your mind? With more options, this is a corridor for everyone. Phew.
Good news. They recently announced that the next phase of the corridor will continue, reaching 7 kilometers of bus and bike lanes here by the end of the year. It's being built in phases to line up with utility work: water, sewer, and electric. They highlighted that the project had already started and the contracts had already been awarded, as if to say, we don't love this, but it's gone too far for us to stop it. But there's a catch. They're implementing some compromises, like allowing more U-turns. And they're going to allow drivers to park on at least one stretch of bus lane on the weekends. Honestly, I'm going to take this as a win. Not that I endorse those changes, but continuing to reallocate space and lay down concrete is my top priority. I do wish they would stop using words like safety, sécurité, when they announce changes that are clearly meant to prioritize traffic flow and car access. Unfortunately, we are not totally out of the woods with this project. Long-term, the project is supposed to cover an impressive 18 kilometers. Those phases are still in planning. By now, I think we have a better understanding of this new administration and their approach, what they mean for cycling in the city. In this video, I'm going to visit a few of the projects under construction this year, to talk about the good news and the bad news. If you live in Montreal, please stick around to the end of the video, or check the pinned comment, because there's an important consultation that you need to participate in.
At the end, after the rest of the video, I'm going to look at the survey in more detail, including some problems and bias.
This is Champlain Street in a residential neighborhood just east of downtown Montreal. This wonderful bike lane has been built in sections over the past few years. About a year ago, where I'm standing looked like this. Now it looks like this. Notice how the parking was removed and the street was narrowed at the intersection for safety and visibility. This was a big rebuild of the street, and it was done because everything was being ripped up anyway, for work on the water and sewer pipes underground. This summer, 2026, the project is being continued down there. This is an awesome-looking bike lane that will soon connect 4 major bike routes. But I'm not going to let that distract us from something unfortunate. In 2024, Montreal announced work was starting on 33 kilometers of bike lanes that year. About 30 projects, big and small, including this stretch. That's new routes and major upgrades to older ones. By one community estimate, about 16 kilometers were completed that year. Next year, 2025, similar numbers. But this year, under the new mayor, that number is 6 kilometers. 6 kilometers, starting construction this year.
And the messaging. 2024 cycling plan. The city announces about 30 projects to strengthen and make Montreal's cycling network safer. And now, in 2026, the new administration outlines the next steps towards safer, more inclusive, and better planned mobility. I don't know exactly how much we'd be building this year if the more pro-cycling party was still in power, but they would have continued working through projects from the 5-year Bike Vision Plan. Much of it has already been done, but there are a decent number of projects left.
This is Saint-Jacques Street, another one of the smaller number of projects that will be continued this year. There's also Guy Street down there that'll look really, really nice. Instead of finishing out the previous plan, which they dismiss as a political assessment not based on consultation, the new administration is jumping into their own plan. They're starting consultation for that now, June and July 2026, with the goal of releasing their own bike plan in about a year and a half, fall 2027. So what does that mean for cycling in Montreal? Well, they are going to propose their own new routes that they want to build. This is not a full pause or a ban on new bike infrastructure. but it will almost definitely be less ambitious and more full of compromises, compared to what we would have had if the more pro-cycling Projet Montreal party had won again. They talk about adapting to the current diversity of neighborhoods, which I take as an indication that they're more open to building bike projects in already bike-friendly neighborhoods, and less likely to champion new projects to make more neighborhoods bike-friendly. Also, if they're proposing new routes around the end of their second year in office, it might be only at the end of their 4-year term that many of them are going to be complete, whatever they are. Another project continuing construction this year, Hochelaga Street. Like I covered in a recent video, they cut the last section of this project under the idea that cyclists can take a detour to a nearby bike route. This is a bigger disappointment for pedestrians who are going to lose out on the road safety redesigns in the project. The project is still under construction in the middle, and we're going to get between 70 and 75% of the initial planned route. I actually wouldn't put the new Montreal administration in quite the same category, as conservative provincial governments in Ontario and Alberta trying to ban or remove bike lanes, who seem ideologically and aggressively opposed to cyclists. There's some of that here too, but what I'm hearing behind the scenes is that a lot of them just aren't that engaged on the topic. They won the election partly based on bikelash, but they're in politics for other reasons. I think they genuinely see themselves as trying to balance everybody's needs. Now, I think they're missing something big there. Our city is so tilted towards drivers, especially in more suburban neighborhoods, that ambition on cycling doesn't prioritize cyclists above drivers. It just puts them closer to balance. Henri-Bourassa, 4 lanes for cars and 4 for transit and cycling. That's a good balance, isn't it? It's a hell of a lot more balanced than this. But if this is all you've ever known, if this is normal, then any reallocation of space towards cyclists and transit riders feels like an imposition. Okay, now it's getting loud. I do think this new administration is very attuned to politics. The place where they cut off the Hochelaga project is almost exactly where they overtook the more pro-cycling Projet Montreal party in votes. The section of Henri-Bourassa that they're allowing to continue, that's an area that voted for Projet Montreal. Obviously, I would prefer to have some real ambition on cycling. But the silver lining of having a party now that's very sensitive to the politics and where the wind is blowing is that if enough Montrealers who bike respond to the consultation, saying that we want safe, pleasant, and protected infrastructure all throughout the city, we can plausibly push them to be a little more ambitious. So please, if you live in Montreal and bike, fill out this consultation before July 15th, 2026. This is Park Avenue, a dangerous urban arterial that's seen 13 deaths in 13 years. And it's so loud that I have to keep the microphone close to my mouth like this. The last administration improved some of the cross streets, but not fundamentally this road itself. The new mayor has promised to act and fix this road. We don't have their plan yet, but they say they're expanding their commitment to Vision Zero, the goal of 0 road deaths. It's good language, but Vision Zero requires ambition. Fundamentally, I think you have to make a choice. Do you want to be the party of Vision Zero? Or do you want to be the party of giving neighbors a veto over road safety? Do you want to be the party of safe bike infrastructure? Or do you want to be the party of making sure everyone has a parking spot very close to their destination? Do you want to be the party of pedestrian safety? Or do you want to be the party of respecting the diversity of neighborhoods, including the fundamentally car-centric status quo in many of them? Do you want to be seen as the pro-bike party, or the party that avoids using the term bike as much as possible?
So I hadn't actually seen the survey when I made this video. It went offline for a week, supposedly due to technical issues. When it came back online, it had many anti-bike changes, like talking about removing bike lanes, and generally framing them as being in opposition to other road users. That's according to a community analysis of the 2 surveys that I will link in the description. I didn't see that old version myself though, so I'll just talk about the new version. People outside of the island of Montreal can respond. I'm not inherently against this. You can have a stake in a place if you work or study here, but fundamentally this stuff is under the jurisdiction of the city and the island of Montreal. Off-island suburbanites don't vote in our elections, and the responses should be separated in the analysis instead of being mixed in together. The survey asks about your primary mode of transportation. I think this is a very car-centric way of thinking. In car-centric areas, you have only one way of getting around, or at least one mode of transport that's far and above everything else. Most cyclists aren't just cyclists, though, in the way that a lot of drivers are just drivers. They're multimodal: walking, cycling, transit, and some driving too, usually. Personally, although cycling is very important to my mobility, I bike places almost every day, but I guess if I had to choose between them, I walk more often. But if I select that, I'll show up in the data as a person who walks, not as a person who bikes. They ask what should be the priority in developing the new bike plan. A full 3 of the options were about consulting or sharing the road between different road users: pedestrians, cyclists, drivers, and so on. Why are these 3 of the options? What's the difference between them? Is this code for the bike plan will be heavily constrained to not affect cars? What should be the priorities for the winter cycling network? Wait, why is remove the winter network even an option here? We're committed to Vision Zero, but removing the winter bike network is an option under consideration in this survey. Is the City of Montreal going to do consultations on removing the winter driving network sometime? How should the bike network be developed? Again, why is no expansion or improvement even an option here? Which types of bike infrastructure do you prefer? I think this is something the city's planners and engineers are pretty good at deciding. Also, they're not interchangeable due to context. I would love fully off-road pathways everywhere, but that is just not an option in an existing built-up city. If I select that, will that lead them to prioritize suburban recreational trails? Do you feel like residents and stakeholders are sufficiently consulted during bike projects? What if I think that consultation should be used for some details of the project, but that residents shouldn't be able to veto bike projects any more than they can decide I don't want sidewalks on my street? What are the key issues to consider when implementing a bike path? Impact on traffic and impact on parking. Are we building a bike plan for cyclists or one for drivers? Neighborhood access for residents. Are they assuming access means by car? In the event of space or budget constraints, which priorities should take precedence? Can you really be a city dedicated to Vision Zero if you're asking people whether to prioritize vulnerable road users or whether to prioritize traffic flow and parking? That's just not Vision Zero. It's vision traffic flow and parking. There's no ambiguity here. They're just different things. And then there's a map where you can put down markers for things to improve. This is actually kind of a cool idea. But why in the world is bike path to be removed an option to pin on the map? Fortunately, the red remove pins that people added are not that common here. The green appreciate pins are for existing routes. The purple missing pins are for routes that need to be added. And then there are yellow improve these existing routes pins. So I don't know what they were thinking with some of these very car-centric options. Are they actually considering removing the winter network? I don't suspect so. I hope not. Are some of these just options that will show up in the results as not being selected by many people? And I guess you don't need to live in Montreal? The survey now seems open to people who at least work, study, or visit here. You do need to create an account with the city's consultation platform, though.
Having basically started this channel to talk about the amazing progress Montreal has made over the past 10 to 15 years, I consider it my job to keep you all informed on what's happening now. If I had to summarize this new administration on cycling, it would be this. Number 1, less ambition. Number 2, awkward compromises. And number 3, politically sensitive and potentially open to strong shows of support. I could be wrong, but I don't think we're going to go backwards on net. Some pieces of infrastructure might be made worse, but with other projects happening, it probably won't be worse to bike here in 2029 than it was in 2025. In my mind, the biggest question is whether we're going to make light progress, mostly stuff that started before, or whether we're going to make, let's say, medium progress. Whether their bike plan next fall is going to include some new and actually useful routes. We know they're not going to match the ambition of the Valerie Plant years, but it's an open question where exactly they're going to fall below that. And I think part of that is up to activism, pressure, and feedback from pro cycling Montrealers. I'm ready to use this channel, celebrate the wins, and criticize the losses. And I'll do my best to keep everybody interested in Montreal from elsewhere up to date. Thanks for watching through to the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and a special thanks to our supporters on Patreon.